Hello and welcome to the ScatterVolt channel, and today let's find out what is the best graphics card for about $300 in early 2024. So we have 5 different graphics cards from all the brands in this video, starting with the Intel ARC A770, the Nvidia RTX 4060, and 3 different cards from AMD that are still being sold brand new, that being the old RX 6700 XT, the newer RX 7600, and the brand new RX 7600 XT. All of these graphics cards have their own individual pros and cons, and don't worry, we'll be looking at not just their individual gaming performances at 1080p and 1440p, but also which graphics cards are going to be best suited for gaming and streaming, gaming and editing, gaming and 3D modeling and AI, and whatever else. So hopefully this is going to be an entertaining but also informative video. So if you enjoy these GPU benchmark overview guide videos, give this video a like, because it's actually gonna need it, because these videos low-key underperform on my channel. So all the likes would be appreciated. So let me give you guys a rough breakdown of each of these graphics cards, and in simple terms, what are the differences? Starting with AMD, like with their RX 7600, that is the cheapest graphics card out of this entire video. And what you gotta know is that this has 8 gigabytes of VRAM, is on the RDNA 3 architecture, and comes in at about $270. I've used this graphics card before in quite a few of my other build guides. It's trusty, it's dandy, but it is the cheapest, which should tell you something later on in this video. But we have the successor to the RX 7600 in the form of the brand new RX 7600 XT, which on paper is quite literally the exact same as the 7600, but this one has a higher boost clock, intakes more power, but most importantly, comes with 16 gigabytes of VRAM. But that said, both of these graphics cards have the exact same memory bus width at 128 bits. So although the 7600 XT has double the memory, the bus width is the same as the regular 7600. What is a little bit different though is the other graphics card from AMD, that being the RX 6700 XT. This one is, I think, the most expensive one, or going to be soon in this video, but it is slowly being phased out of production because this is an RDNA 2 GPU. It's older. But with that said, this comes with 12 gigabytes of VRAM with a 192-bit memory bus, so it's still pretty beefy in its own right, and definitely worth covering in this video. Then on the other side here, let's go ahead and cover the RTX 4060. This is Nvidia's mainstream and cheapest RTX 4000 series GPU you can buy, and this comes with all the bells and whistles: DLSS 3.0 frame generation, improved AV1 encoding and decoding, and dedicated AI cores in this as well. This comes in at $300, but it has only 8 gigabytes of VRAM with the same 128-bit memory bus as the RX 7600 and 7600 XT. And then we have the odd man out, or as I like to call it, the lone wolf. This is the Intel ARC A770. This comes in at just below $300. This is on a completely different architecture, but believe it or not, it actually shares some similarities, because this has the AV1 codec, just like the 4060 and the 2 7000 GPUs right here. And this has 16 gigabytes of VRAM with a 256-bit memory bus. But it also comes with 16 gigabytes of VRAM, which is the same as this one right here. So with that said, it's time to get into the benchmarks, starting all the way down at 1080p. So first thing I wanted to test was Valorant at the shooting range, which with all the graphics maxed out, mostly because this is just a test of how high these cards can absolutely chug out frame rates on a game that is super easy to run. So this should represent most esports titles at 1080p at very easy graphics. And here, the 6700 XT takes the crown, with the 4060 and 7600 XT pretty much tied, although the 7600 XT has higher 1% lows. And then the 7600 takes 4th place, then the A770 comes in at 5th. Regardless, all of these graphics cards are going to absolutely crush Valorant, but if you just kind of wanted to get a gauge of the absolute raw performance of these cards, I think early on we can tell that the older 6700 XT still has it. Then if we go to Fortnite at 1080p on DirectX 12 at just medium settings and medium TSR, here the 6700 XT still wins, with the 7600 XT and 4060 in second and third place, and then the 7600 in fourth, and the A770 once again in fifth place. So here we can see that the 4060 very much is optimized for Fortnite, and I like to note that Fortnite at the moment can support DLSS. So if you're a gamer who's just looking at playing Fortnite on your PC, I'm letting you know already the 4060 is the card to have. And it does pretty well because this is an Unreal Engine game. But now let's bump up the resolution to 1440p, and I think this is where some of these graphics cards are going to be made or break. Because I like to think a lot of you who clicked on this video are looking for an entry affordable way into 1440p gaming on a budget with your next graphics card. So this is where we're really going to see which graphics cards are truly going to come out on top. So here at Fortnite, once again, DirectX 12, medium settings. Here, the 6700 XT still wins, with the RTX 4060 still in second, the 7600 XT still in third, the 7600 still in fourth, and so on and so forth. So nothing really has changed here on Fortnite. But here at Forza Motorsport, we see something completely different. Here, the 7600 XT comes out on top, beating the 6700 XT. And surprisingly, out of nowhere, the A770 is in third place. And I think that's because this was actually one of the few games in this benchmarking suite on this video that exceeded 8 gigabytes of VRAM. And that's something I could tell while I was testing these games. I was wondering why the RTX 4060 was running this game so slow at high settings, 1440p. And I retested it multiple times. And I was like, what's going on? And I'm like, okay, fine, I give up. And then I test the regular RX 7600 with the same memory as the RTX 4060, and they got nearly the same frame rate. There's your first sign that VRAM does matter in 2024. And if you want to play games at 1440p, you probably want a graphics card with a little bit more VRAM than just 8 gigabytes. And in this scenario, the 7600 XT had the most alongside the A770, and the 6700 XT's 12 gigabytes of VRAM also still more than plentiful. Then on Total War Warhammer 3, I like to use this game on my benchmark suite because it is DirectX 11. It's an older API, and for that reason, I like to show it off because here, the RTX 4060 does do the best job on this game, with the 6700 XT in second, 7600 XT in third, and so on and so forth. And I like to think that Nvidia has a really good track record when it comes to optimizing for older APIs like DirectX 11. So that's good to see on the 4060's behalf. But what was most surprising was that A770 result, because that actually came in third. Yeah. I'm sorry about that. It actually came in third over the 7600 XT, which is really interesting because a lot of people were giving these Intel Arc GPUs a lot of crap because they supposedly weren't that well optimized for older APIs than DirectX 12. And here you have an older DirectX 11 API running better than some AMD graphics cards on an Intel Arc GPU. So bravo to Intel's GPU optimization team for older titles like this on DirectX 11. Then we go to Starfield, and once again, everything switches. Although, disclaimer, Starfield is a title sponsored by AMD. So here we can see the 6700 XT and the 7600 XT taking pretty much the first and second spot, although the 1% lows on the 7600 XT are higher. And the RTX 4060 surprisingly actually does a pretty good job here, although its 1% low is a little bit lower than what I wanted. And the A770, even though I was just giving it praise for its optimization in older APIs like the DirectX 11, Starfield just happens to be a little bit of a sore spot because it's an AMD sponsored title. I swear, like, there's no collaboration between Starfield and Intel Arc GPUs at the moment, so they're just running really bad. But at least it's running better than the RX 7600, and I think that could be due to VRAM, but that is a weird result for the RX 7600. Maybe just regular 1080p is more in line with what the 7600 could achieve with a game like Starfield versus the 7600 XT with that increased VRAM. Then let's move on to a game like Returnal, which was a PlayStation exclusive that got ported over to PC. And here at high settings, 1440p, this is a similar trend to some other charts here, but the 6700 XT takes the crown, with the 4060 here actually coming in second, the 7600 XT coming in third, the A770 and 7600 pretty much being tied for fourth place. So all in all, this was a good showing for all the graphics cards in this benchmark, but the 6700 XT I think shows once again that it has the most horsepower out of this entire lineup. But now here's another segment we gotta cover: ray tracing. Although I personally think if you are looking into ray tracing in this price range, I would personally jack up your price tag by about an extra $200 at minimum to at least like an RTX 4070 or RX 7800 XT for ray tracing, because as you'll soon see, you just need a little bit more horsepower to run ray tracing and a good chunk more VRAM. But still, let's see how ray tracing does on these $300 graphics cards. Like going back to Returnal, here the RTX 4060 takes a non-surprising victory. The 4060 and its architecture is going to be the best optimized for ray tracing, and here on a game like Returnal, which looked like it did well without ray tracing, is showing that this card is genuinely better suited for ray tracing, unless we move to a game like Cyberpunk 2077, which, disclaimer, this is an Nvidia sponsored title. And here on the ray tracing low preset at 1080p, the 6700 XT comes out on top, with the 7600 XT not too far behind. And then the 4060 comes in third place. And I think this might be due to memory, because ray tracing requires VRAM. And in a game like Returnal, I think you could get away with 8 gigabytes of VRAM at 1440p with ray tracing on, but on a graphically crazy game like Cyberpunk, there I feel like you do need more than 8 gigabytes of VRAM with ray tracing turned on, even on the low preset, because if the 4060 had more memory, it would probably take first place in this chart, but that isn't the case here, because somehow Radeon is outperforming the 4060 in ray tracing. And once again, this is without any sort of DLSS or FSR. This is just seeing which card natively performs better at ray tracing. Then the 7600 is in fourth, and the A770, bit of a disappointing showing, but there you have it. So those are all the performance benchmarks, but I want to quickly touch on efficiency, because this is a greater talking point with power consumption nowadays, and power usage, and energy bills, and energy costs. So just keep in mind, you can undervolt any of these graphics cards you see here. So if there's one that consumes a lot of power, you can always undervolt it and get roughly the same performance as you get from its stock, but it's going to consume a lot less power. There's undervolting guides for each of these graphics cards you see here, maybe with the exception of the A770. I'm not too sure about that yet. But if you didn't want to do any undervolting and see how these cards do stock, it looks like the RTX 4060 is the clear winner across the board. If you look at these quick benchmarks showing the FPS you get for every 10 watts of usage. So the higher, the better. And here the 4060 just across the board is the significantly more efficient graphics card. I wasn't able to get an efficiency reading for the RX 6700 XT, although it's okay. You can always undervolt it and get some pretty good performance. But just looking off of these charts alone, I think the RX 7600 is going to be the next most efficient graphics card, with the 7600 XT coming in right behind that, because it is more overclocked and has a higher TDP. So that's all of the performance metrics. What would I ultimately choose for, say, 1080p esports gaming? Well, in that case, VRAM isn't that much of a concern, and I feel like you still need a lot of raw horsepower. So I'll say this: if you just play Fortnite, get the RTX 4060. It's a fantastic graphics card for just that game, and it also supports DLSS. But for anything else, Apex Legends, Valorant, CS2, Overwatch, League of Legends, the finals, and whatever Call of Duty game you want to play, grabbing the older 6700 XT is too good to pass up. It just offers the most FPS per dollar, I think, out of this entire video, even if it's older, just because it has the most raw horsepower. That said though, this graphics card is slowly going out of stock, and it's going to be phased out of production for these two graphics cards, which are newer. So get it while you still can brand new, or else you're gonna have to get it used, which is not that bad of an idea either. It might actually hold even more value getting one of these used. But then how about for everyday 1440p gaming? If you want to load up a AAA game or an esports game at 1440p and you want to play it without any worries, then you've got, I think, two options here. Once again, the 6700 XT has too much raw horsepower to ignore, and as you can clearly see in a lot of these benchmarks, it's just outright the fastest graphics card. But I also think I want to give an honorary mention to the new RX 7600 XT because this does come with a 16GB VRAM buffer, and the advantages I saw with this graphics card, even over these two, were in the 1% lows. I don't know if you guys caught that throughout the benchmark section, but the 1% lows on this graphics card were pretty good, right along there with the 6700 XT. And I think that's the advantage you get with getting a graphics card with more VRAM, is that you'll have a slightly smoother experience. And I think the other honorary mention I want to get is also to the RTX 4060, just because it still packs in quite a punch despite that smaller VRAM buffer. So I guess if you're looking for a graphics card for now, then the RTX 4060 will be fine. But I think 2 or 3 years down the road, where software updates can always improve on these graphics cards, you can never physically change out the hardware. You can never physically solder more VRAM onto one of these graphics cards. And if that's the case, I think it might be a safer bet to go with the 6700 XT or 7600 XT, just because these come with more VRAM, because I don't want you guys to run into a situation like what we saw in Forza Motorsport, where that 8GB VRAM buffer basically killed the frame rates on those graphics cards that didn't have enough VRAM. Whereas you didn't find that issue on the 6700 XT and the 7600 XT with 12 and 16 gigabytes of VRAM. But then beyond gaming, what else is cool? Well, for video editing, I'm gonna give a shout out to the card that is actually gonna be the best, and that is the A770 for two reasons. One, it supports the AV1 codec. That is preferred when it comes to video editing. And two, it's an Intel GPU, meaning you get access to Intel QuickSync, which is the best codec there is out there, better than AMD and Nvidia, for video editing, especially on programs like DaVinci Resolve. And you're getting that in a full-blown graphics card. So if you're a dedicated video editor, I think it's actually worth picking up this card. Not to mention, it comes with 16 gigabytes of VRAM. And the more VRAM you have for video editing, the better, just like for gaming. So I think if you're a video editor and a gamer, look at this. It's actually kind of good and better than Nvidia. But if you're not a video editor and you deal with 3D modeling, AI, or just about anything that uses CUDA cores, then of course the 4060 is going to be your best bet because it is an Nvidia graphics card. Any sort of stable diffusion, RenderWorks, whatever, you got it covered here in this 4060. So there's my rundown of what are the best graphics cards you can purchase in early 2024 for about $300. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I didn't even have time to do my hair, man. I have to get this video out. So yeah, we got to make sure we hit the NDA date for all these graphics cards, or at least this one here, the 7600 XT. And if you enjoy these videos, subscribe to the ScatterVolt channel. I think it's worth it. We're on a roll. You should hop on. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching. And this is the ScatterVolt channel signing out.